Hey guys, we just landed here in Seattle, Washington, our beautiful North Point, Washington facility. First of all, we just want to say thanks for joining us on this journey. Anything you want to say real quick, Big John?
Appreciate the support, and we got a lot of great episodes coming your way, so be sure to check them out, show us some love on all the different media platforms, YouTube, podcasts, all that good stuff.
Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes.
Absolutely.
Next few episodes are going to be showcasing our amazing North Point, Washington staff, as well as some of the alumni that have graduated from this facility, as well as North Point, Idaho, that live in the Washington State area.
Yeah, it's going to be a real good time,
guys. Welcome to No Way But North, where we talk about the miracles of recovery and the tools used to achieve them. My name is Cooper Lyons. My clean date is November 27th, 2010. And not as always, I am joined by my co-host, Big John Meldrum, a.k.a. Chocolate Bear.
I've been here with you all
a.k.a. the
day.
Black Paul Bunyan.
Black Paul Bunyan, that was a good one.
Throwing axes.
Throwing axes, bro.
I know. You hit the bullseye every time.
I was killing it.
You were. I was actually kind of impressed with you. Almost as impressed as when you play dodgeball and were like one of the most nimble people on the team.
You should probably tell them the story.
Except for when his knees gave out. Just like,
no, hold on. So we do this dodgeball tournament.
Does the slow collapse and roll on the floor?
We do
like
this
Shaq?
dodgeball tournament for the Boys and Girls Club. So I sign up to it reluctantly.
Just so you can.
And everybody is
Pace
joking.
some of the
They're like,
kids.
oh, John's going to get out. John's going to get out. He's so big, he can't move. I was out there killing it.
until the last like 3 games.
The last game, yeah, my knee started getting a little sore, and I like and we were getting destroyed by this team. This team was.
We placed second place out of like 12 teams, and this last team just killed us. But tell them what happened the next morning.
So after I get killed, right, and I'm like trying to dodge this guy throwing heaters, my knee like buckled, but I still matrixed that shit and dodged it. But I couldn't sit down the next day because my butt was so sore
From picking up
the dodgeballs. So me and him were playing video games, like, and I'm like laying there, and I'm like, I can't sit down. I was like laying on my side, and I kept having to like move, and I was like, I'm so sore.
You need one of those grabber things so you don't have to bend over.
Like your wife had when she broke her foot. Yeah, it was miserable.
Okay, I forgot we were filming an episode of this show for a second, but that's great story time. Yeah. So, real quick, guys, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that share button. Help us get these stories out there. Help us get these tools out there. Help us provide some or spread some awareness and some education. We really appreciate it. And make sure you tell one person that you think we get some value out of this show. It means a lot to us. It means a lot to them. And let's get to our guest. So, he came little last minute prepared with his quote, so I don't have it written down, so I can't read it. So I got to ask you.
The quote that came to mind is that strength is not going on, not. God damn it!
Courage.
It takes a village to raise a child.
You're gonna steal Tucker's.
No, strength is not
Courage.
God damn it! I'm all fucked up now. Courage is not having the strength. Courage is not having the strength to go on when things are difficult.
There you go.
Courage is going on when you don't have the strength.
Hey, pulled it together at the last minute.
That was by Napoleon.
Sorry. You pulled it together last minute.
Thank you.
That was Napoleon?
Yeah.
I like it. All right. So what does that quote mean to you when you hear that?
You know, that quote means in recovery, there's always going to be times when you feel like you are challenged, and just life in general, challenged beyond what you are capable of, what you can endure. Mm-hmm. And courage isn't, that people have exceptional strength. It's just that people keep going on when they feel like they're past the point when they can't. And so basically, for me, it just means just don't ever give up.
I like it. John? I can't. I'm sorry. Please don't make Dan try to say it for you.
I think Dan hit a spot on. I mean, I really couldn't say it any better.
So what I think is Alejandro. He was in here earlier today. We were doing that. We were recording his episode, and he talked about all my growth and recovery has come outside of my comfort zone. Mm-hmm. Right. So pushing yourself to grow beyond what you're comfortable with and get outside of that comfort zone. All those kinds of things. Yep. So, well, thank you for bringing that quote. Yep. Thanks for reciting it for us, guys. This is Dan Labuda. Dan Labuda is the program director for North Point, Washington. So he is the Jon of Washington.
Jon 2.0.
Jon, yeah, the upgraded version.
I feel like the original is always better. I love Dan though. We got a lot of fun together.
Only for nostalgia reasons.
Okay.
We really appreciate you taking the time out of your Saturday to sit down with us. I know we're doing 2 episodes with you as well. So we really appreciate you taking 2 hours out of your day to sit down and chat with us with a microphone in your face.
No problem.
Appreciate it. So we're just kind of going to get into Dan's story. Let's just kind of start with your childhood. What was your relationship with your parents like, friends like, siblings, all that kind of stuff?
Sure. Yeah, I had a really good childhood. I grew up in Issaquah. Now it's Sammamish. It got redesigned or whatever. But my childhood, I kind of grew up in a really rural area, a lot of farms around, forests. And my childhood was like basically riding BMX bikes and building, tree forts and stuff like that. I had a good family. I was adopted. I never knew like my biological family, but I was adopted as an infant and raised by both my parents my entire life. And like by and large, my childhood was good. I played a lot of sports, super active as a kid. I was never great in school. I was always like an average student. So yeah, there was nothing really noteworthy or traumatic about my childhood.
Okay. So when did you start moving towards, was it high school when you started?
Well,
And you're an only child?
No, I've got an older brother.
Okay.
Like going into junior high is kind of when things started to change for me. Like the first time I ever drank, I was about 11 years old, and that was at my mom's birthday party. She was turning 40 years old, and she came from this big Irish family. So my dad rented the community center, and like all of her extended family from Chicago and the Midwest and stuff like that came out. And as an 11-year-old, it was cool because I got to like hang out with all my uncles, and I looked up to them and stuff like that. And they kept giving me, like pouring little glasses of champagne for me. So throughout the night, I probably drank 3 like glasses of champagne and got really good and buzzed, not like super drunk or anything like that. But it was a good experience, like I felt like I was a grown up, having fun, nothing bad happened. I didn't wake up with a big hangover or anything like that. And, for some people, I hear them talk about the first time they drank, they just knew they were going to drink for the rest of their life. And, it's like they found the piece of them that was missing. And it wasn't like that for me at all. Like the next day, I probably got up and went to football practice and really didn't think about it for a long time after that.
The switch didn't flip.
No, not at first. And for me, like it was never really a switch as much as it was like a dial that just kind of slowly got turned up. And it was the same thing with weed. One of my friends around that same time, 12 years old or so, had moved into our neighborhood from Bellevue, and he had a bunch of older brothers that smoked weed. And one day my parents were going out to dinner. I don't know where my older brother was, but he's like, "Hey, I got some weed from my brothers. You want to try it?" And like, "And why not?" And like back then they had the DARE program in. Actually, I'm even older than that, so it was really just like
don't do drugs.
Yeah, pretty much. But like back then, it was even worse. They had movies like Reefer Madness or whatever that kind of showed, people smoking weed and getting
loose,
and then like jumping off a building and stuff like that,
eating glass.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever seen Reefer Madness?
Yeah, I watched it.
It's so great. It's so great.
But like it's so hysterical and so like inaccurate from what you observe yourself that it has no effect on, deterring you from using.
Yeah.
And so like that was the extent of the education about drugs that I had. So when I got offered the opportunity to smoke weed, I knew like my brother's friends were older than me and they smoked weed and nothing happened or whatever. So like
nobody was jumping off buildings.
No, exactly. No babies died or anything like that. So yeah, why not? So I sat down with my friend and we, just smoked a bunch of weed. And like, I don't even think I got high the first time. Yeah. The first time I got high was on Halloween of the same year, which was probably like 6 months later. And we went out, and Halloween was cool as a kid because you go, like at that point I was like too old for costumes. Yeah. And I was like a little juvenile delinquent kind of, so we'd go out and harass kids and steal their candy and like kick in people's pumpkins and stuff like that. But we got high that night, and it was awesome. Like we spent the whole night like wandering around, getting candy from the kids.
Yeah,
and
you had
stuff.
to steal candy after you got high that night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, Halloween is a great night for getting high. But at the end of the night, I got home late. I was supposed to be home at like 10 or something like that. And I got home late because we were wandering all over and kind of got lost. We were all high, not paying attention and stuff. And then like I was laying in bed and my face hurt. And like I was wondering, like, why does my face hurt? And then like it occurred to me that my face hurt because like the whole night I had just this giant smile on my face from being high all the time. But again, like with drinking, it wasn't, you know, like, oh, I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life. It was cool or whatever, but you know, go play soccer or whatever, you know, just do normal life. But it like from there, it just went really slowly. Like in junior high, I'd probably smoke like, you know, maybe once a month. And like when you're a little kid and you're just getting started with it and stuff, at least back then before it was legal, I don't know what it's like now, like you're super paranoid about it. So like you go really deep into the woods so no one can, you know, see you when you're first starting, and you like you brush your teeth and stuff like that. And so I did all that. Yeah, exactly. Visine, like you're just, I'm going to get caught. Everyone knows it, but like really no one knows.
Or you think no one.
Right. But it just progressed really slowly. And like the thing that comes to mind for me is there's that anecdote that like if you take a frog and put the frog in hot water, the frog will jump out of the water. Mm-hmm. But if you take a frog and put the frog in cold water and turn up the temperature really, really slowly, that frog won't notice that the temperature is changing. It'll stay in there until the water is boiling and it cooks to death. And that's kind of how addiction was for me, where like in junior high, I was still active in sports, you know, football, soccer, baseball, motocross, stuff like that, smoking once or twice a month, getting average grades. Like once in a while I'd get a B in a class if I was good at it and interested. Sometimes I'd struggle and get like a C-, but never terrible. Maybe the next year, you know, I'm smoking like once a week, drinking on weekends with my friends and stuff like that. And grades are maybe a little bit worse, you know, like maybe I'm getting less good grades, you know, I'm getting less B's, more C's. Every once in a while, if it's a really hard class, it's a D. And then like it progressed really slowly to the, like by the time I was in high school, in my junior year in high school, I was getting a 0.8 GPA and smoking about an eighth of weed a day, drinking like 5-6 times a week, getting drunk before school and stuff like that. But like, you know, from where I was in junior high to where I was in high school, like things changed so slowly that like I didn't really realize it was changing. So by the time I got to be in high school and I'm failing all of my classes but gym and like smoking all day long and stuff like that, I didn't really realize that it hadn't always been that way. And like, you know, if you're getting F's in everything, and like just being unsuccessful at life, you kind of could or should feel like guilty, ashamed, bad about yourself. And like sometimes I did, but most of the time, like I just had excuses for why everything wasn't my fault. You know, like
external locus of control. Yeah.
How could I be successful in school when they've got 35 kids in a classroom? Like they can't expect people to learn in that kind of environment. So like I'm getting Fs, but it's the school's fault that I'm getting Fs, you know? And
trying to hold the man down.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you know, I was kind of a funny, goofy, strange kid.
Still are.
Yeah, a little bit. But like I would tell myself, well, everyone has like a different kind of intelligence, you know, and schools are just kind of set up for book smart people, and that's, you know,
totally.
So, like I had all of these different ways of thinking about things that just kept me from putting the blame for all of my lack of success in my life on things other than drugs. And that worked most of the time. Most of the denials and defenses I used, blaming other people, rationalizing things, making excuses and stuff like that, most of the time they were really effective in keeping me from feeling how I should feel in response to everything that was going on in my life. But like every once in a while,
have a moment of clarity.
And you don't even realize, at least in the beginning, I didn't really even realize it was a moment of clarity where like I would just be by myself, you know, alone, not doing anything. And then all of a sudden, like for no reason at all, I'd break down and start crying. And it would just last for a second. I'd like kind of beat myself up, like, what's wrong with you, you pussy, you know? Get your shit together, you know? But like really, I wouldn't know exactly what it was that was making me have those sort of moments, you know? And looking back on it, it's easier to see like in hindsight than when you're in it. And looking back on it, I feel like those moments where I was having that kind of outpouring of this just feeling like crap about myself was really the times when I was feeling what I should be feeling in response to everything that was going on in my life. You know, I was failing out of school. I was constantly fighting with my family, getting kicked out of the house, lying to my friends, taking advantage of people, and just doing all kinds of stuff that my morals and values I should feel real guilty and ashamed about. The other thing that was happening, you know, like by the time I got to that point where I was drinking and using, I'd started using other drugs. I was taking mushrooms and acid and doing coke and stuff like that also, is like...
And how old are you at this point?
16.
Okay.
A junior in high school. I was, like, I had a car, and I was like the one guy of all my friends that had a car, and... You know, like I'd drive to pick them up in the morning and they'd pay me with weed to drive them to school and stuff like that. And like we had this routine where we'd all get high in the car in the morning and like walk into school together. And we were all just a bunch of stoners. We were all kind of in the same boat, all in trouble for like skipping class all the time and stuff like that. So me and my 3 friends, like every day we'd be walking into school and we'd have this conversation where like, dude, I'm in trouble. I can't skip classes today. And we, oh, me too. So let's go to all of our classes. So we go to first period. And by the time we got through first period, we wouldn't be high anymore. So we'd like meet in the hallway and like, oh, we got to go get some weed. And we're like, okay, yeah, we'll go get some weed. And then we'll come back and we'll go to third period. We'll just skip second period. And so then this was in 1986. We'd like drive around where I lived, like going to all the spots to buy weed. And then we'd either like,
this is junior year?
In my junior year of high school, yeah. So if I couldn't, we'd buy weed, and then we'd spend like hours and hours getting baked, and then going to McDonald's and stuff like that. We'd make it back to school for like 5th period. Or if we couldn't find weed in Issaquah, then we'd like go to our spot out in Maple Valley or go to our spot in Seattle. And the spot in Seattle, like that was kind of the last resort because it was super dodgy, but like they always had stuff. It was this apartment building on First Hill, where you'd go in and like all of the doors in the hallway were open and you just walk past and we go to our little spot down at the end on the right where you get the weed, but this guy's selling coke and this guy's selling heroin and this guy's selling meth. And they all just got, and I'm like this 16-year-old kid from, so yeah, right? So, but you know, ultimately whether we found, like we'd make a commitment every day, we're not going to skip school. And then it'd be like, okay, we're only going to skip 1 period. And then it'd be like, we'd be gone all day, you know, either smoking weed or looking for weed or whatever. And that's just kind of how it went.
1986.
1986, that's right.
I was born. That was the year I was born.
That's 8 years before I was born.
I've been sober your entire life.
You've been sober my entire life.
Yeah. That's why I don't age. No, so you know, at some point, like during the breakdowns that I would have, I started to realize that, you know, like everything going on was causing some problems in my life. And like I was smoking an eighth a day.
A lot of weed. Dude.
It was a lot of weed,
no,
yeah.
It's a lot of weed.
And I figured, well, I'll just cut out the weed. I'll keep drinking, you know, and that'll happen. And I remember one time I would do this thing a lot where I would go to sleep at night thinking, God, I got to stop this, you know?
Yeah.
And I'd go to sleep thinking, okay, when I wake up tomorrow, I'm just not going to smoke weed for tomorrow. And then like I'd wake up and my routine first thing in the morning was to like take a bong rip before I got out of bed and then get into the shower and stuff. And so every night I'd go to sleep thinking, God, I've got to stop tomorrow. I've got to stop. And it's just tomorrow I won't smoke weed. And I'd fall asleep and then I'd wake up and I'd be like halfway into my first bong rip before I remembered like, oh fuck, I wasn't supposed to smoke weed today, but it's too late, you know?
Yeah.
So,
and what were did your parents just not care?
no, well, they didn't realize like that I was doing drugs and stuff like that. So like they always had me going to therapists because, you know, I was failing out of school and fighting with my dad all the time and stuff like that. So we always went to family counselors, and like invariably the family counselors that they took us to would have a meeting with me and they'd ask me about drinking and drugs and stuff like that. And so like I figured they wouldn't believe if I said, well, I've never done drugs, you know? So like I would give them a little bit. I said, well, I've tried smoking weed a couple of times, but it's not really my thing. And they'd be like, oh, thank you. And it would never come up after that. And but like my dad's drinking like progressed also, and my mom's drinking did too, and like my dad's drinking was more concerning because my dad was an angry drunk. So he went from, like, as his drinking progressed, he went from being like a good father to being a really unpredictable, volatile, abusive father, to the extent where, like, as I was growing up and getting older and older into my teenage years, like, I would retaliate towards his abuse, and we would end up in fistfights, like, occasionally, like, to where the cops came to the house. But we didn't talk about that stuff in therapy. Like, the therapy that we went to, you know, they would ask me about my drugs, and I'd be like, oh, I tried it. And then we would talk about our family stuff, but we wouldn't talk about the really big stuff.
Yeah.
And then we would work on, like, the typical therapy stuff, like, what I hear you saying is, and I feel is, and stuff like that. And my family got really good at, like, putting on that show in front of the therapist, to the point where, like, a couple of therapists even, like, oh, you guys, I think you've made so much progress that you're done, you know. But, like, me and my dad still fighting. I'm still smoking weed every day and failing everything. There was one time where, like, because all of the school I was skipping and stuff like that, every once in a while I'd get a note to go to the attendance office or to the principal's office or whatever. And so the teacher would say, oh, Dan, go to the attendance office, or Dan, go to the principal's office. And I just use those like hall passes, you know. So, like, I'd get out of class, I'd take my bag, and I'd just go smoke, you know, and never ever go to the attendance office or the principal's office or whatever. But, like, on one occasion, I got a note to go to the attendance office, and I went to the attendance office, and my mom was there. And I was like, oh, but, you know, like, I'm high as usual. And I was like, oh, this is a little weird, but whatever. And my mom's like, oh, we've got a therapy appointment today. Your dad's out in the car. And it's like, okay, I'll get out of school. That's cool. So we got into the car, and, like, we drove through Issaquah past the place where I used to do my family therapy. And I was like, oh, that's a little weird, but whatever. And then we drove across Mercer Island into Seattle. And we went to the Seattle Center, which, you know, like, it's all like rides and shit like that there. And I like, oh, this is a little weird, but whatever. And they took me into this conference room in the center house at the Seattle Center. And it was set up so that there's like 45 or 50 chairs, like, lined up in rows, and a bunch of adults, like, sitting in all of these chairs. And then a little stage at the front of the room where, you know, there's like a step up and then a stage, and there's like 4 seats up at the front. And this guy wearing like these wired John Lennon glasses and this African kind of hat, this white guy, white hat or African hat, like, comes up and he puts a microphone on me. He puts a microphone on my parents and stuff. And then they sit us down, and he starts doing this family therapy session with me and my parents in front of, like, this audience of people. And I had no idea what was going on.
Like a talk show?
Not a talk show. Like
a conference almost?
I was, like, you know, I was always high and super burned out. And, like, this kind of illustrates how life was for me, where, like, I had no idea what the situation was. And he did this family therapy session about how my parents can discipline me, and, like, you know, I need to be bought into the discipline, so they've got to collaboratively agree to what my consequences for my actions are. And so we did this whole counselor show in front of all of these people. And then, like, I got into the car and, like, went home, and I said, oh, that was a little weird, but whatever. And, like, that thing, like, all of my life back then, like, I was high all the time. And if I wasn't high, like, I was thinking about how I was going to get high. Yep. And that was, like, such a big part of my life, with, you know, my focus on it and being high all the time, that the experience that I was having then was, and, like, I didn't realize it at the time, but it was kind of like I was going through life, and life wasn't making an impact on me. I didn't have any feelings. I didn't have any emotional response to it. So, like, years later, I saw that counselor again. He was teaching a class at a college. And so, like, I kind of put 2 and 2 together, where he solicited my family to basically use as a model to teach his, you know, class full of social work students or whatever on how to do family therapy. And, like, without having gotten my permission to do that first, and with being put in the position where myself, like, as the identified problem in my family, is used as a model for something that's like really messed up, I should have felt really guilty and ashamed, and I should have felt really angry. But life just didn't make any sort of impact on me, you know?
Just disassociated with everything.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Good, bad, whatever. Nothing felt like anything at all to me. I was just numb to everything except, you know, getting high. This other thing that happened several times is, like I said, I had the car for all of my friends. And like sometimes I would be driving around by myself, and like near my house, there was this really big long hill. It's like 1.5 miles long and like relatively steep. And I would like drive my car down the hill and like take off my seatbelt. It was an auto or a stick. So I'd put it in neutral, get it up to like 50 miles an hour, take off the seatbelt, and I would like jump and stand on the seat, like kind of crouch down on the seat, steering the car as I was driving down the hill at like 50 miles an hour. And then when I get to the bottom, there was a T intersection where you could go left or right, and like on the other side of the T intersection was just a bunch of really big trees. So I'd like steer my car going down that hill, standing on the seat, and then I get to the intersection, I'd plop down into the seat, and I'd go off to my friend's house, and we'd kick it, and they're like, how's it going? Everything's fine and stuff like that. But like what I was practicing was how I was gonna kill myself. And like in high school, my high school taught driver's ed, and you know, being the smart stoner that I was, I knew that I was going to be driving high, so I deliberately scheduled the class after lunch so I could go out and get high at lunch, and then I'd go to my traffic safety class. And like the only thing I remember from the whole traffic safety class was this movie that they showed us about why you should wear seatbelts in cars, and like they had a statistic that said the likelihood of a car crash being fatal increases if you come out of the car. And so what I was doing is like I'd be driving my car down the hill, and I'd get up onto the seat with my seatbelt off, planning and practicing how I was going to drive my car through that intersection straight into one of those big trees. And because I was standing on the seat of the car, I'd go straight through the windshield. But then like I'd drive away and I'd go to my friend's house, and they'd ask me how I was doing, and I'd say everything was fine. And like even
and when you were going down that hill, I'm assuming you weren't like super upset. You weren't pissed off.
Like
you were that regular.
If you asked
numb
me,
feeling.
if you asked me at that time if I was thinking about killing myself, I would have said no. You know, like it was weird. Like, and if you asked me, you know, how things are, how life is, everything's fine and stuff like that. You know, but here I am practicing how I'm going to kill myself, but I'm so disconnected from my feelings and stuff like that it's just kind of like I'm on autopilot. You know, and I had lots of different things like that, like different ways I was going to kill myself. But that was probably the one that I was, you know, gonna do. That would work.
How long? So when this started getting bad, how long was it until you went to treatment?
That probably, so like what led me going to treatment was a couple of things. That was going on for a couple of months before I went to treatment. Like another thing that happened was, you know, I was drinking before school, and it was icy one morning, and I was drinking, I was driving this truck, and it's like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like really good and buzzed going to school. And I see a patch of ice up ahead, and I was like, I'm doing a burnout. And so like I get my truck onto this patch of ice and do my little burnout. And the next thing I know, the truck is like doing a 360 in the road. And this was by like a bunch of farms and stuff like that. I ended up going through this guy's barbed wire fence, hit a tree, like it whipped the truck around, and then I kind of slid down the hill that was kind of covered in snow, and all these dudes' cows like out the fence onto the road.
Oh, no.
And so the farmer like comes out.
Just pissed.
No, not really. He's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And like, I was okay. I was like a little banged up, but not hurt at all or anything like that. And like, you know, 7 o'clock in the morning, a 16-year-old kid, the first, you know, like driving drunk is probably not going to be your first assumption. So I don't think that he even really thought about it. But we ended up getting herding the cows back in, and then kind of stringing up his fence and stuff like that. And we tried to drive my truck out, and like we couldn't get my truck up the snowy hill to get it back onto the road. So I had to leave my truck in this guy's pasture for like a week. And then he gave me a ride home. Like the police never came or anything like that. And like I remember calling my parents and saying, "Hey, I got into an accident, And I put on some tears and shit, like, and my mom's like, oh, it's okay, it was an accident and stuff like that. You know, and I get off that call and I'm like, yeah, I worked it.
Yeah.
And then the guy gives me a ride home, and like the only thing I'm thinking of is, fuck yeah, I don't have to go to school today. I'm getting drunk, you know? Just like, I just crashed a car driving drunk, got out of it, and like, just grateful that I can drink more, you know? So there's that. This other thing, like, you know, I was talking about like how I would work situations to get out of trouble. The other thing that I remember is there was one time I was out in my garage, and my parents' bedroom was up above the garage. And I was on the phone with one of my friends, and he had just gotten like a big haul of mushrooms, and I was super excited. So I was probably talking too loud. And I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, dude, let's get some mushrooms. Let's do it this weekend, blah, blah, blah. And I get off the phone, and the second I get off the phone, I hear my mom in the bedroom upstairs, like these heavy footsteps on the floor. And I'm like, oh, fuck, she heard that. And like, I hear the footsteps coming down the hall, down the stairs, and the garage door opens up. And she's like, I heard that whole conversation. You're in trouble. I'm going to tell your dad. We got to figure out what to do. But like, I've got this brain that like automatically, how do I work this? How do I get out of this? You know? So like, I calm it down. I was like, Mom, I was just talking to my friend about getting a new muffler for my motorbike. You've been really stressed out lately. I'm worried about you. I really think you should talk to a counselor.
Totally.
And she did. You know, like I totally turned it around on her and made her feel like she was the one that was crazy.
That's good thinking on your feet. I got to give that. Muffler, mushroom. I wouldn't have thought of that. I got to give you that one.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, but like as an addict, that's kind of how your brain works. You know,
totally.
you're like, anytime there's
I
the
would've said something
suggestion of
stupid
trouble.
like, I was like, well, mushrooms on pizza, Mom.
I honestly thought that's where you were going. I was
No.
like, he's going to swing it to like mushrooms on pizza.
No,
shit
like
that.
you know, this is even worse because not only did I lie, I convinced my mom that she was the crazy one. you
crazy
know?
me.
So just gaslighted her.
Yeah. So, okay, so those are some bottoms.
Sure.
What was your first? I'm assuming you only went to treatment once because you got clean
Right.
young.
I did, yeah, one time. So like the thing that got me to treatment was kind of an extension of this same sort of thing where like I'm always trying to get myself out of trouble. So at one point I got one of the notes to go to the principal's office. And for whatever reason, I went to the principal's office, and I thought I was going to get in trouble for something little. Like prior to that, me and my friends at like one of our football games had run through the banner that the football team's supposed to run through and stuff.
Wow.
So I thought I was going to get in trouble for something little like that.
Yeah.
But I go into the principal's office, and she sits me down, and she pulls out this manila folder that's like an inch thick and sets it down on the table with like this thud, and it's like my file. So she starts flipping through all of this stuff, look, and I'm getting nervous, and my brain's starting to work on the solution. And she like tallies it up, and she's like, you've had 156 unexcused absences the first semester of this year. And then they also knew that I got into a fight with the kid in the bathroom because it broke one of the urinals off the wall. And then also, like, I knew that there was one time when me and a bunch of friends were smoking weed. Like, we're all standing in a circle smoking weed in the woods. I'm not proud of this, but we're smoking weed in the woods. And like, as I'm taking a bong rip, I'm looking down the trail, and I see the gym teacher coming. I'm like, okay, what do I do here? So I take a bong rip, I clear the bong, and then without like doing anything, I hand the bong to the dude right next to me. And as soon as he grabs it, I just took off running and just left them all there. And I was so paranoid, I probably ran for like a mile. So like they had some stuff on me. So she tallies up all the absences and stuff like that, and she fills out this form, and I'm getting nervous and stuff. And she like signs this form, slides it across the table, and turns it around, and it says emergency expulsion notice. And I'm like, oh fuck. And like by this time, my dad and my relationship was bad.
Yeah.
And like I'm thinking my dad is like literally gonna kill me. And so like my head starts working, okay, how do I work this? And this was 1986, and back then there was these young celebrities that were getting busted for drugs and going to rehab and stuff like that. And there's like a little bit of public sympathy about that. And I thought I knew a little bit about confidentiality and stuff. And so like, without really thinking about it, I just kind of threw it out there. Like, I got a problem with drugs. I really need some help. And like, my thought was, because it was about drugs, it would be protected by confidentiality.
Unless you wouldn't tell your parents.
Right, exactly. And then I thought, well, she's just going to be impressed by how brave I am and stuff like that. And this whole thing's going to go away. And so like I put it out there, and I was like really pleased with myself. And she says, well, you know, maybe if you go to treatment, you can come back to school next year. And like, I had this like deflated feeling come over me. But like at the same time, I had this like sense of relief when she said that. And like for me, when I look back on it, it was kind of like my whole life was this juggling act where like I'm constantly juggling all of these balls, lying to my friends, lying to myself, stealing money and stuff like that. And like when she said you got to go to treatment, it's like all the balls just crash to the floor. Like, and it's disappointing that the act is over, but it's such a relief to not have to juggle all of those balls,
like
you know?
dual life
And so
constantly.
like after that, I had to tell my mom I'd been expelled from school and I got to go to treatment. My mom says, well, you better stay at a friend's house for a couple of days while I tell your dad. So we did that. Stayed at a couple of friends' house, went to a concert, got all messed up. somehow got myself out of a DUI.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was Aerosmith.
Nice.
Got good and messed up. So anyhow, she told my dad. My dad was surprisingly like okay with it because I think that they were all just really scared. You know, like they saw me just tanking in life.
Yeah.
And they didn't know why. And then like when the drug piece came in, it finally all made sense. And it finally became something that they thought that we could address, that could actually help me. So it ended up after that wanting to go to treatment, you know, like after that whole thing, I was just like, yeah, I'm done. I want this. And so we went back to one of the family counselors that we had seen when I was a kid. And the family counselor did like a drug assessment on me with my parents in the room. And I couldn't be like fully honest about everything I was doing in my parents. So don't recommend doing assessments on kids with their parents there because you're not going to get the truth. But I told the counselor, yeah, I'm probably smoking like 3 or 4 times a week and drink once a week or whatever, like a minimized version of what was going on. And at the end of it, like she says, well, I think you should probably go to an outpatient treatment program. And I'm like, I thought back and I remember all the times that I had tried to quit smoking myself and I'd just wake up and smoke. And like that, it's demoralizing to not be able to do what you want to do. And like on one occasion I quit smoking. I was like, I'm done. I'm just going to quit smoking. I quit smoking for 5 days and I was like super proud of myself. Like, first of all, I didn't put any time limit on it. I didn't say 5 days and it's cool, you can go back. I said, I'm quitting forever. I made it 5 days and then I was like, I think I proved my point. I can go smoke weed again. But I took mushrooms every day of those 5 days. So, you know, technically it might not count. But like, I knew that I had tried several times on my own. And then I looked over at my dad. And my dad's in the assessment and he's so pissed off that he's like digging his fingernails into the chair he's in. And I'm like, I need to get away from this guy for a while. It's like, and so like out of nowhere, I was like, I need inpatient, you know, to the counselor. And they're like, oh, okay, we can do that. And so I ended up checking myself into inpatient. I wanted to go to inpatient, but like as an addict, even though I wanted to get sober, like I didn't know if I would be able to handle it. You know, I had all these fears about it. So the day before I was supposed to go into treatment, I took a pack of cigarettes, like cut it open with an X-Acto knife, cut off the bottoms of a bunch of cigarettes and stuck a bunch of weed into the bottom of the pack of cigarettes and then sealed it all up like, you know, like it had been unopened. And I was going to take that pack of cigarettes in. But like I had this routine where I'd go to sleep and I'd wake up at like 2 o'clock in the morning because I had insomnia. And so I'd smoke weed to go back to sleep or whatever, you know, and the insomnia went away. But I woke up and smoked all my weed the day before I went into treatment. So I went in sober. I checked in on March 31st, 1986, and somehow I've been able to stay sober ever since.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how many years is that now? I'm not good at math.
32 or 33?
33.
33, yeah.
Because I just turned 33.
You're such a dick.
Dan is literally old enough to be my father.
That's crazy.
Remember that.
So what things, I mean, in 33 years of recovery, like you've experienced everything good and bad that somebody can experience in life. So I don't necessarily want to get into all of that. Maybe someday we can get into all of your entire life. But what are some of the things in early recovery that were good, that were bad, that helped, that hindered, those kinds of things?
There's a couple of things. Like the first thing that comes to mind that was helpful is I went to a treatment center they had just started treating adolescents. And so like I was the only young person in there and the rest of the patients were adults, which was a little intimidating. Like my roommate in treatment was this guy who was an Italian mafia guy. And like one day I was in my room.
What? Of course, Dan
I know.
Levine would have an Italian mobster roommate.
But like I'm in my
treatment.
room, and I'm this really naive 16-year-old kid from Issaquah. Like this is embarrassing
Like,
to
just
say in
sheltered.
front of John, but I was goth, so I was like wearing eye makeup and stuff like that. in
Yes!
treatment. And I've got this
Yes!
Italian mafia roommate, and
Wait, hold
Like,
on.
do you
have
Pause.
pictures?
Pause. You were wearing eye makeup?
I didn't wear eye makeup to treatment, but I was wearing it to school.
Do you have
I hope that
pictures
gets
of
edited
this?
out. No. So that, like I went to school before cell phones and cameras. So thank God for that. But like one day I was in my room with my treatment roommate, and he like was changing to go to sleep, and he had these scars all over his chest. And I was like, "What happened, dude? You fall in some blackberry bushes?" He's like, "No, I got stabbed a few times."
fall in some
so,
blackberry bushes?
it was super intimidating, and I was kind of a fish out of water.
Hold on. I just can't get, like, I see
Let it go.
Dan. I can't. Black hair, like, pasted to his face with, like, eye makeup and, like, chains and
Tights, leggings.
Yes! Is that what you were wearing?
Yeah, God, I hope this
denim
gets edited
leggings.
out. No, not even denim, dude. Like I don't know, stretchy, whatever. Not lycra, but stretchy. You know.
This is so great.
Yeah.
This is so great. Dan, you're never going to
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know why you told him that.
On camera, great.
On camera. This is going to live forever.
It was the drugs.
Okay, Dan.
That was definitely in my first step. Oh my God, I can't believe I wore those pants.
It's so good.
Okay, so fish out of water. Anything else? Like with the goods?
Yeah,
bads?
so like there's a couple of things that happened in treatment that made a huge impact on me. One is, like I said, I was a daily pot smoker, drinking, doing coke once in a while. And I was in treatment with a bunch of older guys who were doing heroin, doing coke every day. Back then it was like, you know, smoking rocks and freebasing and stuff like that. And like when you are in treatment and when you go to 12-step meetings, like sometimes there is competitiveness about your story, like who's the hardcorest addict or who's the worst alcoholic. And I'd hear things like, I don't know if you belong here. I probably spilled more alcohol than you've drank in your life and stuff like that. But at some point, you know, you go to treatment and they start teaching you about the disease and stuff like that. At some point in my treatment, it just kind of clicked that like I was there for a disease, and
Which wasn't even considered a disease back then.
well, like it was. It's like it's been a disease since
It's
like
been
the
a
50s.
disease, but like just
But the public
acknowledgement.
knowledge of it, and like even now when we talk about it, we talk about the disease concept. It's not a concept.
No.
It's just accepted by doctors, psychiatrists, and everybody, except for, you know, alcoholics themselves, that it's a disease. And an alcoholic doesn't want to believe it's a disease because if they can cure whatever's causing the drinking, then they can drink more.
Yeah.
You know. So anyhow, that's a different rant for a different time. But like for me, looking at it as a disease, like I just decided that I was going to approach treating this disease with the same mentality that I would treat any other disease. Yeah, it's going to suck that I've got to go to 12-step meetings. It would suck if I had to go to chemotherapy too. But am I going to resist doing that? No. Like you just suck it up because that's what you got to do to treat your disease.
Yep.
And then like the whole thing about, you know, the competitiveness about your stories, and one-upmanship and stuff like that, like it really perpetuates the notion amongst recovering people and even treatment professionals that you can't quit until you hit bottom. And I think that is an idea that kills addicts and alcoholics. And it's an idea that you would never apply to any other disease. So my addiction didn't progress to the depths that many other people's addictions didn't.
Same.
You know, like, but you know, if a person went to a doctor and said, "Hey doc, I'm having some chest pains," and the doctor runs some tests and the doctor says, "You got 90% blockage in your heart arteries, but you're not having a full-blown heart attack yet. Why don't you go home, have a bacon sandwich, and when you're having a heart attack, then we'll treat you." You get a new doctor right away, you know. But that was kind of the prevailing logic for a lot of people in recovery and treatment and stuff like that back then. You can't quit until you hit bottom. And
Well, and I
like,
think
and I
part-
just never,
Sorry, go ahead.
I never kind of got distracted by that. For me, the time to start treating a disease is when you become aware that you have the disease, regardless of how far it's progressed.
Well, and I think it's really hard for people that are in the treatment industry because they see people and they've tried to help people that might not have this as severe of addiction symptoms, right? And those people are not willing because they're not going through enough pain. And I think we're finally getting to a point where we're advanced enough in therapy and MAT and all those kinds of things where we can kind of actually start treating addiction before they hit that bottom. Because people are a little more willing or able to facilitate that willingness through what it means.
Absolutely.
But no, I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you.
Yeah.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Now, so the other thing that was important about, setting the tone for my recovery is at one point in my treatment, my counselor called me into her office and said, hey, we got this thing that we want you to do that we think is going to help your recovery. And what it was is they ended up sending me on this 3-week-long survival trip where, I was, in the desert, hiked 120 miles. I lost like 15 pounds. And
spiritual awakening.
Well, no. But like the treatment center did some follow-up studies where they figured out that sending people on the survival trip didn't improve their recovery rates. But for me, when I look back on my recovery, like the reason it was so important for me wasn't because of what they sent me to do. It was because when I was in my counselor's office and she said, hey, we think this is going to help your recovery, even before I knew what it was, I knew I was willing to do it. Yeah. And that set the tone for how I worked my recovery program when I got out of treatment. And like by and large, my recovery has been good. Like I have a very normal life. I'm married. I've got a job that I love. I get to travel, own a house, all of that stuff. I've got a really normal life. And, if you meet me now, it's not apparent that I'm a recovering person. I'm just a normal person. In the beginning, recovery took work. I went to meetings every day when I got out of treatment. Part of that was, because my dad still had his anger problems, and I just went to meetings to get out of the house. Yeah. But I went to meetings every day. And then, life gets better. I got a job, had this girl that I was with for a couple of years, and everything was going good, and my meetings kind of tapered off a little bit. And then one day I came home from work, and there was a couple of garbage bags on the front porch. I opened them up, and it was all my clothes. My girl had decided without telling me that she was throwing me out of the house. And that was at 21, 3 years, 5 years sober. And I had never really gone through any sort of pain in recovery. Yep. And so what I did is there was a while where I was just kind of wallowing in pain, not knowing how to cope with it, thinking about drinking just to have some relief from that pain. But I started going to meetings every day, and I got myself into therapy. And I really think it's because I set the precedent for myself in treatment for being willing to do whatever it took for my recovery, regardless of whether I understood why it would help or not. But I was able to do those things.
Follow suggestions.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love it.
Exactly.
I just can't get past the goth.
You just shared some really
it was
stuff.
deep. It was deep, but now I've got this image in my head about Dan Labuda rocking eyeshadow.
Dan Labuda. Do you want to share anything out there with anybody that might be struggling wearing eyeshadow currently that might not know what to do?
Just
wash it off.
If you're concerned, talk about something. When it comes to eyeshadow, just do your own thing.
That's better. That's better.
Rouge.
That's better.
Rouge.
No, but on a serious note, somebody that might be listening right now that might have a family member that's struggling, might be struggling themselves, might be thinking about getting into the addiction treatment industry.
I've got something very relevant to that. Several years ago, my mom died from the disease of addiction. During her life, I had always wanted to help her, to say something, to talk to her. I always thought that there would be a better time in the future where I could have a conversation with her. And she died before I could have that conversation. And so what I would say is, with addiction, you don't know if you're going to get the chance down the road. The time is now. Same with any other disease. The time to start treating it is the moment you become aware of it, not to wait until it becomes worse. And unfortunately, with addiction and using and stuff like that, you don't know how much time you're going to get to have those kind of conversations to try to help somebody. So do it now.
For sure.
I love it. John, anything you want to say as we get out of here?
Nothing. That more than anything, it's as the program director in Boise, it's really it's been a pleasure to be able to meet Dan, and we've kind of grown into our roles together because we kind of both took over our roles at the same time as far as the inpatient, and so me and Dan got to spend a fair amount of time back in January, February, March.
Yeah.
So, just I know Dan's doing a rocking job. Sorry, long day. Rocking job here in Edmonds, and I mean he's killing it, and the facility's thriving, and we're getting great results, and our patients that are coming up here and then coming back to Boise, they're thrilled with the program. So it's amazing to have a colleague and a peer like Dan.
Beautiful. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time out of your Saturday to sit with us. Guys, have those conversations with your loved ones. Whether you're struggling yourself or you have a loved one that's struggling, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, so we can share this with somebody else that might be struggling. And as always, this has been Noah North. We're talking about the miracles of recovery and tools used for
If you or a loved one are struggling with addiction, please call 208-999-4064. The views and opinions expressed in No Way But North do not reflect those of North Point Recovery or any other institution or organization.